So, I'm the youngest in my family, and you can't tell because I don't like attention. And they hate when I say this, but I'm the youngest by a lot. So, it ages them. Sorry, guys, back home. So what happened was that my parents married in Puerto Rico, moved to the States, to a suburb of New York City, had 4 kids in a row, as good Christian couples do, and then decided to go back to the island, where they raised my siblings. And then, I like to call it a miracle, but my parents had me, and then moved back to the United States, to New York, to Yonkers, a suburb of New York City. And so what that created for me was a lot of space between me and my siblings. There was a space and a gap of time, but there was also a gap of experiences. They had had this sort of magical, wonderful childhood in Puerto Rico. Pause. That means that I am an American citizen of Puerto Rican descent, and I'm very proud of that. As are the people that are currently on the island and people that are still here. So just to get it right, unpause. They had this fantastic, magical childhood, and my mom was one of 15 siblings, and so they had cousins and all this great stuff. And then I had a childhood where I was sort of disconnected. And although Spanish was my first language, I quickly acclimated to speaking English, and I was in a suburb of New York City. As you can imagine, that could have been very fertile ground for a disaster. A young Latina in a mostly white suburb, mostly white classes, and certainly people that didn't look like me or sound like me on television. And so forming my identity could have sort of stumbled along the way. But something amazing happened, and it happened in the rhythm and the tradition of my family. By the way, we're 4 girls and 1 boy, so there's a lot of talking happening as well. What happened was this amazing sense of story just emerged. And it's not as though we sit around, a campfire with a guitar. You can do that if that's your thing. It wasn't our thing. But what happened was that every family reunion, or just a random Tuesday, someone would say, hey, do you remember the time? Or, oh, I saw so-and-so, and is she still? And it would begin a cacophony of call and response, of just story after story after story, which was so fun. And they did not adapt that mentality that children should be in another room. So although I was little, I was 4 or 5, and they were in their teenage years and very cool, they would bring us in and allow us and say things like, do you hear this? You could tell the story. What happened that time? And so slowly but surely, my mind and my soul started to be filled with heroes and villains and interlopers who were actually sitting right around me. Pretty cool. And so many things happened that connected me and tethered me both to Puerto Rico, to my grandmother, to my cousins, to my mom, to my dad, in so many different ways. I'd love to tell you those ways, but I'd rather just tell you a story. Now, picture it, 1980s. My sisters are all teenagers, and at this point, one of my cousins had joined our family, so I got another sister. And they are all struggling with 1 bathroom in a working-class house in Yonkers, New York, and they need to get to school, because my mom's rule was, once the door is shut, you're not coming back inside. You need to get to school on time, and I ain't taking you. So, in order to get to school, my sisters had to take number 1 bus, and they had to then take all the buses that connected from there out to their respective high schools. And so, my sisters one morning were running a little bit behind, and we're like, we need to make some decisions real fast, because we can't come back in the house. So 3 of my sisters, after getting dressed and putting on their garb, or coming down the stairs, running outside, and my sister Abby, the oldest at the time, notices the number 1 bus is coming. And she's like, all right, ladies, we need to plow. She looks down, and she's like, oh, good, I put on skippies today. Skippies were what we called Keds. So she's like, oh, good. So they start running for the bus. None of them are athletic, mind you. And as they begin to run for the bus, my sister decides to declare to the universe that she had a great idea. And she said, oh, my God, thank God we're wearing sneakers. So, pause. Well, what she was supposed to say is, thank God we're wearing sneakers. Somewhere in the middle of the word sneaker, the story changes. We're not sure what happened. She tripped on air. She clipped the sidewalk. Her foot hit something. And so it went like this. Thank God we're wearing sneakers. Yeah, don't feel bad. According to Abby, she went flat down. According to my sister Sarah, she was there and then she was gone. According to Eunice, she got full air. She was just full arc in the sky and then down. Either way, but number one bus is coming. They can't go home because mom will kill them, and Abby is flat on the ground. So Eunice says, they look around, they make a decision, and she's like, it was like Nam. We just dove in, grabbed her, threw her over our shoulders, and ran for the bus. They flag down the bus, they get her on, they kind of cruise her, and she seems okay. That's where the story picks up again, because Abby's like, but I wasn't okay. Oh no, I wasn't. And she picks up, and she's holding onto her pinky, and when she shows her pinky, once again, the story evolves. According to Sarah, there was a little bit of blood. According to Enid, it was bad. According to Abby, there was just blood gushing all over this bus. And so my sister Enid, in a moment of panic and camaraderie and friendship, yells out, somebody help me, my sister's bleeding! And no one did anything. And so according to them to this day, they managed to get notebook paper and wrap my sister up like a Civil War hospital, and they made it to school. And to this day, 30, 35 years later, if you talk to Abby, she always goes, and if you look right there, that scar, that's the price I paid for testing the gods that day. I love this story so much. I love this story so much because although I was alive, I wasn't a teenager. But it brings so many things up for me. One of the first things that it brings up is I remember being 4 or 5 and sitting cross-legged on the floor while my sisters were battling it out to make sure that they looked good. Teasing their hair, spraying it, blue eyeshadow up to where they couldn't see, right? One of the things they had to do was put really tight jeans on. So one would get on the bed and the other one would go, pull! And they would get themselves in. Sometimes they would hook a hanger through the zipper and just yank. You know. They got into those jeans though. And whether it was always said or not, somehow I absorbed. It doesn't matter what you look like. It doesn't matter your body type. It doesn't matter anything. It's important that every woman have a sense of style. And so to this day, if you line us up, all 5 of us up against this, take a picture, we're always fabulous. We all look different, but we all look good. Yeah. The other thing that I remember and that I know is I remember that feeling of my mom saying, look, door closes in this house, you gotta get to school. I don't have anything to give you and I don't have much to offer you, but school is what you got, and you better go. Grandmother who couldn't read, mother who only had a 2nd grade education. Out of all her kids, we got 4 degrees, 2 master's degree, and a punk kid that was a college professor when she was 22 years old. That was a humble brag. And the last thing is, I remember myself, still working class kid, still having to take a public bus, with my friends being all awkward and weird, right? Wasn't the tall one. And thinking, how do I fit in here? How do I get in here? And realizing that I could do it by telling a story. And I'd be like, hey, you want to hear what happened to my sister? One time she was running for the number 1 bus. Because that's the thing about story. I mean, that's why you're sitting all, that's what we've heard tonight. Story is a complete unit of possibility. In 2015, there was a New York Times article, and the author wrote that they were messing up with their family. They were middle class, 2-family home, they were fine, they were together, and somehow they were just not getting it. And there was a disconnect with their kids, and they thought, man, we're really messing this up because this is what helps form a foundation for kids, and we're just not getting it right. And so they decided to research the problem and talk and ask questions. And they asked sociologists, and they asked professors, and they asked teachers. And what they came up with was really simple. One of the things that you can do is develop a strong family narrative. And I push on that, right? And I say, what you have to do is create a space for story. Because what happens when you hear someone tell a story and you turn off the TV and you invite people in, is that you are creating a perfect unit of possibility. I'm going to tell you why. Let's dissect the story, right? The first thing that happens when someone tells a story, when someone heals a story, is that you remember. And we all know how important it is to remember and recall. We talked about it, right? Good, bad, ugly, in between, we have to remember. The second thing that happens when we tell a story is that we feel, my God, we let it all come out. We feel it when we tell it. We feel it when we hear it. Sometimes we feel bad for ourselves. Sometimes we evaluate ourselves. The third thing that happens is tell. Don't underestimate the power of what happens when things get verbalized, when things get said, right? It marks you in the world. I'm here. I matter. This was said. And the last thing it does is it connects. How many of us have gone through various icebreakers and group activities to try to find a way to connect. Yeah, the whole front row went, But imagine something that just lets it happen. It's pushing out a space where everyone can kind of tether themselves and hear themselves either in the narrative of someone else or hear themselves again when they retell their own stories. And how important is it that when we try to figure out and create a space in the world, we want empathy, we want sympathy. And here's the possibility by just moving things aside and inviting stories in. So author, one of the greatest storytellers alive, her name is Linda Barry. Anything else, go look up Linda Barry. Her name is spelled with a Y, L-Y-N-D-A. And she says that stories are all around us. We just have to invite them in. And we have to create a space to welcome them. And it's not really hard. Some of the speakers tonight talked about it. It's not really hard. Linda Barry says, and I go by it, the first thing is super easy. Make a list. Make a list. Make a list of all the pets you've ever had, of all the moms you know, of all the cars you've owned, of all the actors that come to mind, of your best hair days, of your most embarrassing moments, the time you locked your keys in the car, that one time that your best friend spit out what she was drinking because she read your tattoo and she was the first one to tell you it was misspelled. True story, not mine. Make a list and then pick one. Pick one of those things. And just don't force it. Allow the story to come. The best thing about it is to do it in the present tense, right? I'm running, I'm walking, I'm jumping, I'm crying. Tell it about someone else, but still use the present tense. My mother was jumping. She's running, she's laughing. The second thing that you do is that you tell it. Tell it first to yourself. Use your shower, great acoustics. But tell. The reason I say tell it and tell it to yourself first is because of the third step, the feel. Sometimes you're going to have to feel stuff. And you want to kind of be ready for it if you can. Right? And then the last thing, connect to somebody. Call your friend. Call your mom. Go to dinner. Right? Figure out a place and a space, because what happens when you do that is that you help define your world and you help define the world for the people that came from before you, the ones that are next to you, and those that are to come. Creating a space for story allows us to be a little less selfish. How important is it for me now and for people from the U.S. Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico that our stories of before are what's going to carry us into building tomorrow? Making a space for story means you are purposely creating a possibility to revitalize or to connect. Do it often. Create stories. Make people laugh, make people cry, imitate some folks. Repeat as much as you want. But I invite you today to make a space for story. Thank you.